Thank you so very much. I'm delighted to be here. This is a very special place for me, Bhumika Hall, which literally means the center of the earth. So it is a great thing to be talking about the fate of the earth in this Bhumika Hall. And I'm also delighted to be contrasting Arjuna and Oppenheimer, incredibly strange people, strange creatures, but what kind of contrast could possibly be there? So I will explore with you, and then I'm happy to invite questions, comments, so that we can understand it even better. As we know, Oppenheimer film will be shown today, and so it has been talked about all over the world. And what makes it special, Oppenheimer was a student of Bhagavad Gita, and his presence is very special. So I will explore some of these things. Now, what is in the center of this picture, what we see is Krishna showing his Virat Rupa, Vishwa Rupa, to Arjuna. So some of you may or may not know that Mahabharata is the central manuscript of India. It's the center of mythology, of myths and values and culture of our country for at least 2,000 years. And around every corner of the country. And it has touched in our hearts and minds in various ways. You see it in sculptures, you see it in paintings, you see it in theater, you see it in music, you see it in songs. So it is part of us. And so see how it has been interpreted. And then Bhagavad Gita is a very integral part of Mahabharata. Some of you may not know that as the war was going on, it's a family war, a civil war, a war between the clans. And Arjuna is the great archer, he's the great warrior. Suddenly he's stuck with a certain question. Why should I fight? These are my people, this is my guru, my cousins. Why should I fight? For what purpose? And his charioteer is Krishna. Krishna is the Lord, he's the God of love, he's a great yogi, he's an avatara. So he's asking Krishna, why should I fight? Now, it's not very often we have this opportunity to be asking a question of a great master. Why should I do this? So today I'm exploring some of these dilemmas, moral dilemmas, that all of us have faced at some stage or the other. But especially if that dilemma is going to impact on people on a grand scale, it is not just personal dilemma, it is a dilemma for the whole earth. So Arjuna is asking this question of Krishna, why should I fight? And the whole Bhagavad Gita and its wonderful, exquisite 18 chapters, beautifully expressed in musical verses, he reveals himself and gives a great updesha, a great word of wisdom, which has been interpreted and reinterpreted many times. And I myself have been reading it for a long time. I still don't always understand it. I still get overwhelmed by it. But what touches me deeply is the interpretation given by Sri Aurobindo of Bhagavad Gita. So I'm going to quote you some of those things as well. So here in the center of this picture, as you see, is a picture of Arjuna asking Krishna, and Krishna revealing his great Virat Rupa, his Vishwa Rupa, and not just looking at your tiny little self, but a grander sense of the self. Now, what makes it special? This very day is a very special day. What makes it very special today is the Mahavir Jayanti. Mahavir is the great founder of Jainism. He's the 24th Tirthankara, some 2,500 years ago. And he's the prophet of peace. And his sculptures, I have written a book on the Jain temples of Rajasthan, and some of the wonderful architecture, and you see sculptures of Mahavir and also other sages of Jainism and other principles. So it's extraordinary that it is his birthday, his birth anniversary. So he's a prophet of peace. Now, what makes it special, I feel, in my reading of Indian history? again and again, India has been, with all its strifes and wars and tensions and so on in its long history, there have always been people in this country who speak of peace, who speak of eternal peace, who speak of peace within and peace without. Whether it is Mahavira at that time, 2,500 years ago, or Buddha, or Saint Kabir 500 years ago, or Guru Nanak some 460 years ago, or Mahatma Gandhi in our own times, and Sri Aurobindo. These all pictures, people, faces, voices that come again and again of unity and harmony and peace. So it's not an abstract academic idea, it's a real idea, it's a tangible idea, it's an existential idea. How do we live in peace with each other? And it is an ongoing, challenge for all of us. And especially when, as we will talk briefly, when the weapons of destruction are so incredible and they can wipe it off. And that's why I'm talking about Oppenheimer today. So this next picture here is of the Earth. And Earth, this is a picture on the right side, sent in 1990 from Voyager 1 and taken from a distance of some 6 billion kilometers away. And one astronomer, Carl Sagan, wrote a book called Pale Blue Dot, that we are a small little dot in this huge cosmos. And we often forget, we fight over a piece of land with neighbors and over one country against the other, one province against the other, and so much strife goes on. But when we look at it slightly as a cosmic roop of it, a Virat roop of the cosmos, we say we are just a little dot. There are now billions and billions of galaxies we are discovering on the Earth, on the cosmos. And now why is it that our Earth, little dot, this Earth, this place is the only place, so far as we know, which has life on it, which has people like us on it, which has many other diversity of images and creations are on it. It is miraculous. Truly it's miraculous. Why is it so? Why is it so that we alone in this huge, huge, huge cosmos, that we alone are living? Now I know there are many scientists in the last many years trying to find some indication of life on the Mars. Will be wonderful. A little drop of water perhaps, a little sign of life, it'll be wonderful. We spent billions of dollars trying to find life on the Mars. But what shocks me, what is incredibly ironic, what is strange, is that we spend billions of dollars to destroy life on the Earth. It's extraordinary. I wonder what would people do if you find a little spot, a little life on the Mars, what would you do with it? But if you don't celebrate life right here, really, life here, that will be a great shame. So for me, a cosmic rupa, a Virata rupa of the Earth in its grander scheme of things is very important. It's very important. This is what I'm going to dwell on, that we forget that in the making of the weapons of destruction, our small strifes, we get more and more self-centered, and we forget, truly we forget, the center of the great self. From our self-centeredness, how to move to the center of the great self, I think that's our real journey. So here then, I put these two pictures of Mother Earth, and this is the only place, nobody sense the miraculous sense of celebration. And anybody who does not celebrate it, really, we are blind. We forget what wonderful things we are bestowed with and how we are destroying it. Now, I quote here something very beautiful, because it's not what I'm sharing with you, it's just not academic in the sense it's nice to write a PhD thesis, because there are hundreds of books written on Oppenheimer, at least 100 books on this scientist, which I'll share briefly. At least 1,000 articles written about him. I wrote about him an article in Canada, in the Canadian newspaper, a full-page article in the Globe and Mail in Canada 25 years ago. And so there are many, many things written. So what I wish to talk about, what is the future of our Earth? And what is our responsibility? What is our dharma? Our true dharma? What does Gita tell us now? What is our responsibility as beings who are children, who are older, who are students, who are teachers, who are doctors, who are nurses, who are scientists, who are engineers, all kind of people? What is our dharma? true dharma, and how do we follow it, and who do we listen to. So these words here I read to you: we of the coming day stand at the head of a new age of development and a larger synthesis. We are not called upon to be orthodox Vedantins or adhere to one of the theistic religions of the past. We do not belong to the past dawns, but to the noons of the future. A mass of new material is flowing into us. All this points to a very new and very vast synthesis. This is Sri Aurobindo writing in the S's in the Bhagavad Gita. Truly, very touching. Not just the dawns of the past, not going back, yes, this happened, we can debate, and people keep debating, that's good. Historians do it, very good. But what is really important, how do we move into the future? Now, I'm a much older person than most of you here, but I look back and say, really, the real journey for us, how to move forward existentially, being touched by a certain divine light, by the transcendent view of life. So the synthesis, for me, the synthesis is the existential and the transcendent together. And these words of Sri Aurobindo certainly inspired me a great deal. Now, then, I will give you a little indication of this man, Oppenheimer. Now, some of you may know, I'll see the film today, but even the film is a little complex film. It's a 3-hour-long film, tells you. But Oppenheimer was a scientist, a physicist. He was born, it is his birthday tomorrow, 22nd of April. He would be 120 years old. He was born on April 22, 1904. And he was an American, born in New York, but he was a German Jew. Very important. He was German origin and a Jew. Many people don't know that at least 10% of the population of USA 100 years ago was of German origin. And there is a very beautiful little clip when the Americans are being sent to fight against the Germans in Europe in the First World War. The president of USA is asking the soldiers, he say, remember, you may be Germans, but you are now Americans. You are fighting against the Germans. There's a little clip. So it's very interesting to see that Oppenheimer, from a rather rich family in New York, born in 1904, a German background and a Jew. And why is it so important? Because he did his PhD in physics, a young man, 23 years old, from one of the great universities which are established in Germany in 1926, the University of Göttingen. They said there were 9 people doing their PhDs with him at the university, out of which 6 people were awarded Nobel Prizes. Extraordinary. He was never awarded Nobel Prize, but he was considered a very brilliant man. Young man, very clumsy, very shy, very arrogant, very aloof, very, very awkward with people, and not good at all in experimental physics. He first studied at Cambridge University for a year and a half. Then he moved to Germany, as this was the time in 1920s where really science was beyond national borders. This is the real wonderful thing about science, until not too long ago, that science did not belong to any country. It did not belong to any religion. It was the seeking of the truth and of the nature, and then sharing it openly. And so my article that I wrote 25 years ago, I said how, with the making of the atom bomb, there was a new snake in the Garden of Eden. And so here then, Oppenheimer moved to the University of Göttingen in Germany in 1920s. And he was already being hailed as a brilliant man. But again, very important to remember, very clumsy, very awkward socially, and also somewhat sexually promiscuous. Very important. I should share with you because it's very important. You'll see in the film. It's important because you can be very brilliant in mathematics, but does not make you that you're socially apt. You can be a brilliant cricket player and can be awful with your wife and your children. So the peace within has to be reflected with peace without. And so this is a trouble with a lot of our people all over the world, all of our leaders. There's a wonderful line by Martin Luther King, the great black leader in the USA. He says, we have guided missiles and misguided men. We have guided missiles and misguided men, truly. We have guided missiles which can go and within few feet of distance, within few minutes, literally 10,000 kilometers away. And we have created those incredible weapons of destruction. But what is going on inside us? Who are these people who are doing it? Are the presidents of Russia, or president of USA, or France, or Germany, or this and that and that and that? So really very important for all of us that our inner development as human beings is very crucial to be able to be wielding this kind of incredible power. So here then, Oppenheimer, after finishing his PhD at the age of 23, very young, he did it in 1.5 years, which is remarkable. He comes back to USA, and then he very soon becomes a professor at the University of California in Berkeley. At that time, quantum mechanics was just beginning to be known. We are beginning to know what is the nature of atom. First half of the 20th century, I'm a physicist. I did my master's degree in physics from Punjab University in Chandigarh. And then I went to do my PhD at the University of Toronto in Canada. And so for me, these were great heroes. We looked up to them as one looks up to some film stars. They were, their lives, their stories, who are they, what did they do? So it was amazing. So first half of the 20th century really belongs to physics. This is also the century which saw two of the most crucial wars in the human history. More than 100 million people died, killed by new weapons of destruction, whether they're tanks or aerial warfare or chemical warfare or use of atom bombs in the Second World War. So very crucial, this first half of the 20th century. This is the time some of our great men like Sri Aurobindo lived through that time. Mahatma Gandhi lived through that time. Tagore lived through time. Einstein, one of the great, who I'll talk about, is one of my gurus. He lived through that whole period. So what does it mean? That people can be great achievements in science, at the same time not achieved inside, destruction, incredible destruction. So here then, Oppenheimer returns after doing his PhD from Germany. As a young man of 23, he comes to University of California in Berkeley, and he's appointed as professor. And very soon, he's a clumsy professor. He does not know how to teach, and hardly any student would attend his class. But slowly and slowly, he begins to develop good skills. And then he begins to seems to have developed certain charisma. More students were attracted to him. Now, what is very crucial, and very important part of the film today, he is attracted to communism. In 1930s, a lot of ideas of communism, socialism. What is socialism? What is communism? What is a welfare state? What is the role of the state in the lives of people? And at that time, USA, if some of you may know, President Roosevelt was the president. He introduced what is called New Deal, new ways of taking care of people. If you lose your job, insurance, old age, healthcare, all these new measures were being brought in USA for the first time. And many were calling Roosevelt that he's a communist. And at that time, many people like Oppenheimer, a young man, and many other students in his class and others were drawn to the idea of socialism, Marxism. Now it's very crucial because this is what will kill him later on. This is what would happen, I'll show you. So then suddenly, the word gets around in 1930s. This is the time of Hitler. This is the time of Nazism. And much of the science that was being developed in Germany, it was called Jewish science, because so many of the great scientists at that time were the Jews. And one of the greatest was Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein, one of the greatest, not only great scientist, but an extraordinary human being. Now, under the pressure of what he saw coming, he left Germany, and he came to USA. He was at the Institute of Advanced Studies in USA, and he was there for the next 30 years or so. Now, suddenly the word is getting around that Hitler's scientists are likely to make a new kind of weapon. And that weapon, nothing of this kind has ever existed before. They are discovering that the atom, which structure of the atom was being studied. If you break the atom, certain kinds of atoms, if you break the atom, extraordinary amount of energy will be released. And if that is, they feared that if Hitler's scientists get this, the world will be wiped out. It was a real fear, a real fear. And as many scientists from Hungary, from Italy, from France, from Japan and Germany were being welcomed to USA, one of the scientists, a great scientist, Leo Szilard, who discovered neutrons in the structure of the atom. He was also a Jew. So in that state of fear, they approached Albert Einstein, who was the greatest pacifist. He says, do you have any idea what is likely to be done in Germany by making this new kind of weapon? So Albert Einstein was persuaded by Leo Szilard in August 1939 to write a letter to the President of USA that please let us make this bomb before Germany makes it. Now, I must say, Albert Einstein regretted the rest of his life that he wrote this letter. It's considered one of the most iconic letters that he wrote in a simple way, addressing the president. Mr. President, want to tell you that the scientists in Germany, who were their friends, they knew each other. They were friends as they were friends in the Mahabharata, on both sides. They were gurus, teachers, friends. So that we know they're likely to make this weapon. And if they do, we'll be wiped out. So it was then that the letter went to the president, and about 2 months later, at that time, the war, USA had not joined the war. The president said, let's go and start the construction. It was the biggest undertaking in the history of human beings ever. Over the next 3 years, more than 1.5 lakh people, 150,000 people were engaged in making the bomb in many parts of the USA. And the final expense of the bomb was $2.2 billion at that time, which is over $50 billion today. No project in the human history, no cathedral, no temple, no dam, no bridge, no pyramid cost that kind of money as this weapon did. So it's an extraordinary commitment. And so when it started, the person who was chosen to direct it as a scientist was Oppenheimer. He was a young man. He was only 39. I say young man, it sounds like, but perhaps young to me. But certainly he was a young man. But he was not he was a theoretical physicist. He was not an experimental physicist. He was theoretical. But he seemed the man who in charge, General Groves was the person in charge on the military side. He felt this man has a certain charisma of working, and he'll bring out good things from other people. So then, finally, to make the story somewhat short, he was, Oppenheimer pulled all these people. They were set, part of this place where it was being experimented and collected was in a state of New Mexico, in the desert, in Los Alamos. And first time the experiment was done to say, does it work? So it was done on the 16th of July, 1945. Now, important thing to remember, by that time, Germany had already surrendered. Germany had surrendered on May 7, 1945. The only country that was not still fighting against USA, against each other, was Japan. And there were rumors, there were speculation, there were words being said that Japan is likely to surrender, but it had not surrendered. So Germany had already surrendered on May 9, 1945. So who do you fight against? Who do you drop this bomb against? So the bomb was tested in a place it was called Trinity. It seems blasphemous to call it that. but it was when it was tested, Oppenheimer, who was a student of Bhagavad Gita, he was quite drawn. He was quite drawn to many languages. And he was quite drawn to poetry. He was an unusual man. Very unusual in the areas of science, a person so drawn to poetry, to art, to painting, to philosophy. And so he was just very curious why science is just this bit. As I must say, as myself, as a young man, suddenly discovering other areas of art and sculpture, which I didn't know anything about when I was studying physics. So he was drawn through these, these very famous lines that he said came to my mind. Now I have become death, the destroyer of worlds, quoting from Bhagavad Gita after the first explosion of the test on July 16th, 1945. Many people said we should invite the Japanese to see what we have created. And the man who had gone to Einstein, Leo Szilard, another Jew from Hungary, a brilliant man, but deeply pacifist. He said he collected signs from 75 scientists who were working on the bomb in many places. He said, we want to just show the power of the bomb to the Japanese, but we do not want to use it. So he collected the signs, but Oppenheimer opposed it. And many others opposed it, say, we have made this bomb, we have spent $2 billion, how we're not going to use it? What, is that possible? So the word that Oppenheimer used, phrase used called lure of the technically sweet. When you have created something so grand, technical achievement, you want to see what it does. So indeed, 3 weeks later, on 6th of August, 1945, the bomb was used and shot over Hiroshima. And 3 days later, it was used again, slightly different kind of bomb, in Nagasaki. We still don't know to this day how many people died. Could be 200,000 together or 300,000, but those who died were thought to be lucky. Those who survived, half survived, they suffered most because of radiation. Different kind of bomb. Different kind of bomb. And the pictures are coming at that time, and Oppenheimer, as you see in the picture, Time magazine, most popular magazine in the United States at that time, even now, a picture on the front page. He was called the father of the atom bomb and hailed as great titans who have brought incredible victory. He was great Mahavir. He's a great Yodha. He's a warrior. And so he was hailed as the father of the atom bomb. And the scientists were all many jubilant. And at the same time, there is a feeling, what have we created? And what does it mean? It is a turning point in the history of mankind. Really, until that day, we had no use, we did not know how else to use atomic energy. It is one of the great pity of our human evolution, psychologically, spiritually, that when we discovered a new form of energy, we had discovered electricity, we had discovered oil, we had discovered coal, we had discovered wood, we had discovered water, we had discovered many things over the millennia. But for a long time we were wondering, what is burning on the sun? Surely it's not coal, surely it's not wood. What is it that is burning? It was one of the great knottiest problems in science, in physics. What is the source of energy of the sun? And when it was discovered in about 1938 or so, that it is called fusion, that there are only two elements in the sun. There is hydrogen and helium. When the hydrogen atoms are together, create helium, and the process of, through Einstein's equation, E equal to mc square, incredible amount of energy is released. So that's what is creating this energy. So what is the great pity? That both discovery of fission, which is what atom bombs are, and fusion, what is hydrogen bombs are. First time we discovered this new form of energy, we discovered it for destruction. We discovered it for destruction. And So we find a turning point in the human history, in our evolution, that we found a new source of energy, and we say, what can it do to destroy? So these are some of the pictures I show you here of here then the picture of was called Manhattan Project. The name of the whole undertaking called Manhattan Project. Manhattan is a part of New York City, the center of business of the city of USA in many ways. And this picture on the left you see here is the picture of Leo Szilard, the scientist I mentioned from Hungary, a Jewish scientist who approached Einstein that let's write a letter, and other people here. And then you see here on the right side Pisnik, that he is the one who started this movement that let's not use the bomb on Japan. Now, as we know again, Japan's second bomb was used on the 9th of August, and then less than a week later, Japan surrendered. And it surrendered, sadly, in some ways sad, on the same day as India got independence, just 2 years earlier, 15th of August. The day of surrender of Japan is the same day as India's independence, 15th of August. But it turned out a whole new way of looking at source of energy on weapons. And now, even though Soviet Union was allied with the USA in the Second World War, but there's already suspicion beginning to build that Iron Curtain. These are communists, and we cannot trust them. And they were beginning to wonder, how long will it take them to make a bomb? And do they know anything? And they had a very low opinion about scientists from Soviet Union, that they are not smart people, they can never make it. It'll take them 30, 40 years to make it. But it so happened. 4 years later, in 1949, Soviet Union used its first atom bomb. And it came as a great shock to USA. Who is revealing the secrets to them? And that's how Oppenheimer comes into the picture again. He's a communist. He's a communist. And the other people are communists. So these are part of this whole complexity of politics, of suspicion, of fear, of looking for an enemy, and who to trust, who not to trust. These play an incredible role in the international politics. I wish we had a slightly different way of approaching these things, but they have played a very crucial role. Here then, a book came out, very crucial book, which had a great, certainly as a student of science, physics, for me, it was one of the greatest books I have ever read, called Brighter Than a Thousand Suns, written by a journalist from Austria, Robert Jung. It tells the story of the making of the bomb, beautifully told, engagingly, incredibly told. And these pictures here on the right side, you see signs of many scientists who opposed, saying it's time we learn to curtail this new source of energy. There should be a commission that says what can be shared and what must be shared, what controls should come. And Oppenheimer was very much at the front of it. And then you see another picture I shared with you of Albert Einstein with a great Indian poet, Rabindranath Tagore, in 1928. So some of the forces, of good forces, people talked about unity and goodwill. They're very much part of it. Now here then, I move forward. What are the moral dilemmas? And what is conscious? In the human rights, the universal rights, human rights, there's a word called freedom of conscience. And people debate, what is conscious? We know freedom of religion, that you are welcome, that people should have the freedom to worship, to believe and practice any religion. You're a Christian, you're a Jew, you're a Hindu, you're a Buddhist, or you are an atheist. You don't believe in any of them. You have the freedom to that. And the countries say, yes, we grant you that freedom, and you will not. So the question is, what is the freedom of conscience? And because do I have the freedom? Arjuna asked this question. You see a picture on the left, the great warrior asked this question, should I kill? I wonder, Does a soldier has that freedom to ask, should I kill? And here are three pictures I show you on the right side, at the bottom here, is a picture of a great Indian king, Ashoka the Great, 300 years before Christ, 2,300 years ago. He was engaged in a war called War of Kalinga, which supposedly at that time killed more than 200,000 people, at a time when the human population was less than 2% what it is today. And he felt, what an awful thing I have done. So he essentially became a Buddhist. And even today, if you go to the state of Odisha, on the northeast side of India, there's a great Shanti Stupa. And the river is called Deya River. That means a river of mercy. So these are important turning points in the Indian history about what is dilemma. And so, as I said in my poster and my other conversations, that sometimes we have the daring to ask the question before we do the act, as Arjuna did. And many times we ask the question after you've done the act and say, why did I do it? And then you repent, you feel guilty. Some people commit suicide. Some people say, and then most of us, all over the world, say, I didn't do anything. They hide. They sweep it under the carpet. They rationalize. They make excuses. That's our story. So here then, I show you three faces. The first on the top is a famous play called Macbeth by Shakespeare. It was presented here not too long ago, about 2 weeks ago, here in the auditorium. What is Macbeth? Macbeth kills his king and is goaded by his wife, Lady Macbeth. But after the murder, there is a great pain, suffering, questioning. Why did I do it? So the whole play is in a way questioning about the human condition. Why did I do it? And then how Lady Macbeth commits suicide. How he's haunted by dreams and nightmares. So the play is one of the great plays, written first played presented in 1606, over 400 years ago. Then the second one on the right side, I show you a little reference from one of the greatest films ever made, called Seventh Seal, a Swedish film by Ingmar Bergman, in which there is again questioning. The man you see on the right side here, he is a knight, means he's a big guy, big position. He has gone to fight in the Crusades in Jerusalem. And he's coming, and he's engaged in killing and rape and destruction. Now he's coming back and questioning, why did I do it? Yeah, I'm trying to be fighting for God, for religion, for spirituality, and yet I'm engaged in destruction and killing. So here then, there's a beautiful scene that I've never seen in any other film, in any film. He's talking to death and playing game of chess with death. Again, if some of those who don't know the film, I urge you to see it. It's one of the great films. So here then, I bring this here, that it's not just in real life that we are haunted by certain questions, why should I do it? But also our theater, our films, our drama, our stories are very much part of it. And Macbeth, and here, and Seventh Seal by Ingmar Bergman. And this one here at the bottom is the story of the great labyrinth, supposedly where the monster lives, and how all of us have a little labyrinth in our heads. One of my books is called 7,000 Million Degrees of Freedom. And the subtitle is called One Earth, 7 Billion Worlds. That each one of us has a world inside our heads. And some of that world we share with others. Sometimes we don't even know what that world is. It's our own subconscious. So here is a very great piece of labyrinth, and then how the monster is there, how it's kept. Now here, what I raise questions, something not often done. I say, does an ordinary person have the right to invoke his conscience and say, I will not fight? Why should I fight? Now, some of you may know it was here again in the month of April, on 13th of April, 1919, the great Jallianwala Bagh massacre occurred in the city of Amritsar in India, in Punjab. This is at a time where India was a British colony. It was ruled by the British. And there was a big festival going on. It was the New Year festival of the Sikhs and the Punjab, Vaisakhi. And there were 12,000, 13,000 people gathered to celebrate. Food, dancing, music, good clothes, fun, and so on. You know, as I'm from Punjab, I know Vaisakhi is a great festival. And suddenly this park is surrounded by the army. And it was General Dyer, a British general. He surrounds it without a word of warning, no notice, nothing. They start shooting. And within 12 minutes, they killed more than 1,200 people. And when General Dyer died in England 7 years ago, it said on his grave, it said, he did his duty. What duty? That question that comes to my mind, can a person, the people who killed, there were 90 of them. Many of them were from Punjab. Some of them were Gorkhas. Some were from other parts of the country. How did they feel about it? Did they ever ask that question, why should I do it? Why did I do it? Did they feel guilty, sad? Had anybody made a film about them? Has anybody made written a short story about them? Who are these people? Do they not have the right to ask question? Why am I doing this? Indeed, if they had asked, says, I don't want to do it, they probably shot on the right of the spot. Yeah, disobedient. So it's interesting. Our question Arjuna is not the only one who should be asking the question. I think every human being needs to ask this question. Why should I do it? What is my morality? What is my dharma? So the second one I bring here, the Indian soldiers in the First World War. Again, at that time, India was a colony. And the war was opening in Britain, 1914. And more than 1.5 million Indians were recruited in the army to fight in Europe and in Africa against Ottoman Empire, Turkey. 1.5 million. Most of them, I haven't found anybody of them had any idea where the hell Germany was or France was. They had never seen a white person. They couldn't distinguish a German from French or French from an English person. And they're fighting. Why? They were poor. They needed jobs, needed work. So is there a morality? Where is the morality? Where is the conscience? Shouldn't people be asking, why should I go? You're hungry, go. Just as is happening right now in Russia, happening in Gaza, people being killed left, right, and center. So, question, who should ask this question? Why should I do it? And then what is this role of the society in response to that question? Indian soldiers, 73,000 of them died overseas. Now, what is not known, which I discovered only recently, many of the people who came back to India, they carried diseases because they were in parts of the world they had never been before. And after the end of the First World War, we had a flu epidemic, Spanish flu epidemic. And I discovered only very recently, the country that suffered most was India. Over 10 million people died here of flu, at a time when India's population was only 10% of what it is today. Can you imagine? 10 million people, but that is equivalent of 150 million people dying today. Why? They're carrying diseases in countries they have never been. So I've asked that every human being, to realize our true humanity, our true spirituality, our true being, asks this question, what is my dharma? And then society, if it is it is a spiritual society, it is a civilized society, it is real society, it has to allow that to happen. There's a wonderful line. Mahatma Gandhi was attending a conference in Britain in 1931, and a roundtable conference. And his first time, he's gone there as a leader, a great leader, well-known leader of India, visiting England at the time. So after the conference is over, he was asked by the journalists, Mr. Gandhi, what do you think of Western civilization? He said, that's a very good idea. All civilizations are good idea, but how civilized are the people? You have great achievements in science and philosophy, in academics and many areas, but you can be brutal, as many European countries have been, as many countries have been. So really we need a shift in our consciousness, saying, yes, an achievement in science, but also an achievement of our hearts and minds, of receiving the other as equal human being. Now I'll mention here the third one because we have that much time. The Crimean War. This is in war in 1854, 60 years ago. And this Crimea, again, Russia fighting against France and England. In that war, more than 650,000 people died. And then the poets write great poetry. Cannons to the left, cannons to the right. And rode the 600. They were brave. They didn't care who, they offered their lives. What a sham. Incredible amount of our poetry is to sing praise and term of people who are not making sacrifices. They are being sacrificed. I was reading the other day how many people in Russia have died in this war. They said 50,000. They are being sacrificed. So really, Crimean War, poets have written great things about it, but really I've shown a picture here, the cannons to the left and cannons to the right. Yours not to ask why, but to do and die. Now there's the point. Yours is not to question why, but to do and die. Now what's amazing, I just came across that one of the persons who read Bhagavad Gita was not only Oppenheimer, was the great SS leader, Himmler, was also a reader of Bhagavad Gita. And he used to say, so I read, that for him, Hitler was Krishna. He said, Hitler is my Krishna, and I'm doing my kartavya, my duty to him. And whatever he says, I do. Indeed, when the cases went on against the Nazi leaders who survived, they said, I was doing my duty. I just carrying orders. So really questioning what is conscious, what is an order, what is duty, what is dharma. And particularly those who are engaged in war becomes very crucial question. It's not just an academic question. I have never been in a war, I have never fought in a war, and none of my members of the family. But certainly I bring these questions because they are important questions. Here, then I bring here then the power of myths, because Mahabharata is a great story. Great story. And it's not just a story. Some people wonder, was Arjuna a real person? Was he a historical figure? Is Krishna a historical figure? What is history? But really sometimes I feel what is a creation of a myth or a fiction or a film can have incredible power on our imagination. Incredible, far more than a historical figure. There is a book called 500 People Who Changed the World, but who never existed. So really it is the power of literature, and now increasingly cinema, and increasingly images on your computer and smartphone that have incredible impact. In some ways, today we're going to see a film that has been seen by millions of people all over the world. Most of them didn't even know the name Oppenheimer. But why this is becoming so popular? Because cinema is the youngest art form. It's only about 130 years old. Started in 1895 or so in France. But its impact is far, far, far more than any theater or any book of literature, because it reaches so many more people. And so it tells lies, it tells propaganda, it tells awful things, many things. And you wonder what is real and what people want to see. One of the films, since I mentioned to you about Nazi Germany, one of the films made in 1935 about Hitler, called Triumph of the Will, by Lena Riefenstahl, a woman, 35-year-old woman, Lena Riefenstahl, in which you see Hitler coming to Nuremberg, to the rally. And he's coming out of the clouds, and the plane is just coming. It's like an angel is coming down from the sky. He's made it like a little god. So we have films about all kinds of, we have films about artists, about musicians, about biopics. These are called biopics. So this is Oppenheimer's biopic, history, biographical. As there was film about Gandhi not too long ago. And there's been film about Lincoln. and the film about Nixon, about JFK, and so on. So these are very important how these are. Now here I show you quickly a little pictures of how Mahabharata has been shown, presented in many countries. You see in Japan, Mahabharata was presented in France overnight, 9 hours on the river in France, just outside of Paris, by Peter Brook, one of the great artists, film theater artists. I attended it in 1986. And then he took it inside Paris. And then he took it to Glasgow in English language. So he was saying the story of Mahabharata is the story of mankind. It's a story of humankind. And he made it look like it, it's characters. So you see mythic images. Now what's also important that the story of Mahabharata has been on the Indian television for 94 weeks, over almost 2 years. Every Sunday, there were millions of people watching it, and story. And then they also, you grandiose, you see who's Arjuna, who's Yudhishthira, who's Karan, and so on. So these are the powers of myths that created literature and cinema and others create. Now the question comes: what for us today? What is the Vishwarupa? What is Krishna's Vishwarupa for me, for you, for all of us? I have not ever met anybody who's seen Krishna the way he's portrayed in the Bhagavad Gita. Maybe you have, I have not. But I wonder, what is a Vishwarupa that make me move away from self-centeredness to a greater sense of the self? Now already we see many images coming to us from James Webb's telescope, from many parts of incredible cosmos. What is amazing discovery in physics, and as a student of physics and of history of science, I'm very intrigued by it, that we find that most of the universe is empty. There's nothing, emptiness. Nothing, no thing. So our sense of what is matter, what is thing, is changed dramatically. Physics is already becoming metaphysics. Truly, physics is no longer physics, it is metaphysics. And so the question is, just empty, complete empty. Our own bodies are empty. Atom itself is empty. Most of it, 99.999% is empty. So when I first discovered it some 20 years ago, I was saying, how is that possible? How is that possible? It's incredible. This emptiness and creating incredible structures, things and so on. So I shared this with you, if I may share it with you. I shared it with my wife. I said, did you know that most of the universe is empty? My wife is a dancer, a classical dancer. She says, of course it has to be empty. How else can you dance? Wow. And she says, Shiva is dancing, is Shiva dancing? I said, wow, what a way to look at it. So the creation, what is emptiness, is not empty. It has incredible creativity in it. Truly. So I say to people who have a very staying notion of 18th century, 19th century idea of what is matter, what is spirit. I say already physics is becoming metaphysics, and emptiness and extraordinary amounts of things being created. Here then, I show you something quite remarkable. This is the most famous equation in all of science. E equals to mc square. It is Albert Einstein's equation. And that's hailed. And those who know, E is energy, m is mass, c is velocity of light. And when C is multiplied squared, so you see how velocity of light is very high, 10 to the power of 10. So when you square it, it's 10 to the power 20, this extraordinary number. And that's how the whole idea of atom bomb was located in this, that can create amazing energy. 10 years ago, again in the month of April, some word got around that Einstein wrote a letter to his daughter. He said, please, you do not understand my equation correctly. My equation is not about physics, it is about human love. He said E stands for universal energy, universal energy. And M stands for people coming, masses, men, women coming together. And so when it's multiplied by the velocity of light, it's immense. It can create incredible energy. And this letter went around. It was read in the churches, in the synagogues, in the temples. People shared it, wrote books about, wrote articles about it. So how is the world incredible? That is a new universal force of love, all based on Einstein's idea, E is equal to mc squared. Sorry, it turned out to be false. He wrote no such letter. So, but when I, as a student of science and a student of Albert Einstein, I felt he could have written something like this, though in slightly different ways. Because he really believed in the idea of peace and universal love and coming together. And he was, to the last day of his life, urging all people, scientists and others, let's control these incredible weapons of destruction. He was asked, because he felt guilty that he's the one who wrote the letter to the president. He was asked, Professor Einstein, what kind of weapons will be used in the Third World War? He said, I don't know. But I do know what kind will be used in the Fourth World War. There'll be stones and sticks. The world will be wiped out. Truly now we have so much incredibly destructive force in the hands of few countries. You know, we have Security Council of the United Nations, 5 members. These 5 countries are making the whole world insecure all the time. Yeah, they call them Security Council, but they should be called Insecurity Council. Really. And Russia, USA, France, UK, and now China. Truly, the incredible wealth being used and weapons being used, it shames, I find shocking that we human beings call ourselves civilized, and yet the amount of resources, and it's not just physical resources, but intellectual resources. Some of the greatest scientists, mathematicians, engineers are working for them, and it seems to see no end. Here I quote from President Eisenhower, who was a very unusual man. He caused a lot of armed wars in Asia, but he also had an interesting way of looking at things. He said this in an article called Chance for Peace in 1953, when he was president, just had become president a year earlier. He says, every gun that is made, every warship launched, every rocket fired signifies, in the final sense, a theft from those who hunger and are not fed, those who are cold and not clothed. This world in arms is not spending money alone. It is spending the sweat of its laborers, the genius of its scientists, the hopes of its children. Remember, I said, why is America, country spends extraordinary amount of money on weapons of destruction? It's a so-called defense budget. It should be called the offense budget. America's defense budget is bigger than the 10 next countries put together. Why? And that's why you need to sell weapons, make weapons, create enemies, create distrust. Amazing. You know, some of the amazing people I've met in the USA, but at the same time, there's some incredibly destructive forces. And you see it, how it gets reflected in so many ways in other things. So I find it really, we need to move, ask ourselves, what is dharma? In the light of Oppenheimer, you'll see this film, because he's asking, they're haunted, he's thrown out, he's deprived of his clearance that he cannot participate in any meetings of the government. And now suddenly the whole budget was being now more and more weapons being made. Now we have so many weapons all over the world that whole earth can be destroyed 10 times over, maybe more. Here is a beautiful line from a song by John Lennon in a place called Imagine in USA, in Manhattan, again in Manhattan. Imagine there is no countries, it isn't hard to do, nothing to kill or die for, and no religion too. Imagine all the people living life in peace. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you will join us and the world will be as one. This is a celebration. And then, as you know, some may know, John Lennon was assassinated. He was killed. As was Martin Luther King, as was Mahatma Gandhi. All people, some of these people spoke of peace. So, really, in some ways, this is my hope, my wish, my prayer, that we need to ask all of us, what is my dharma? Really, what is each one of them? Why do we spend so much resources on creating distance from each other? What is so different? Is a Russian so very different from an American? We are human. So really we say called Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. The whole world is my family. That's a beautiful line that came from India some 2,000 years ago. Wonderful. But we need to learn about our family a bit. When I went to Canada at the age of 21, I had never seen a white person. Shocking for me. I had never seen a black person from Africa. I had never seen a Chinese. So it's one thing to say, yeah, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, but do I know about my family? What kind of families? Do I love them? Do I accept them? Do I tolerate them? Do I find them I want to get away from them? Do I trust them? Very important, truly. It's very beautiful to have wonderful Shanti Mantras and wonderful lines, but we need to integrate what is beautifully said in words in our lives. Ultimate, our real test is how we live, the art of living, how we express ourselves to the world. That is my hope. That's what I say. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Thank you.